back to Spring Into Math Day. We're really close to the end of the year and we want to make sure to fit in a few extra lessons. And today's lesson is about data and linear equations. So let's go ahead and get started. In this lesson, we're going to learn to summarize some statistical data, and we're going to use that by looking at a graph and plotting some lines on a graph. So let's take a look at a few examples together. The first question we're going to take a look, or example we're going to look at, is I'm asking you to create a graph using the following function. And our function in this case is y equals x plus 2. There are several ways that you've learned this year to go ahead and plot this on a graph and make the nice linear equation. I want you to pick one of those ways you've learned and go ahead, get a piece of graph paper out, draw a coordinate plane, and graph this equation. Now I've already graphed it on the next slide, so go ahead and graph now and check to see if your answer matches mine. So I have a nice coordinate plane here, and we are looking to graph y equals x plus 2. Now let's break apart this linear function and decide what we're going to put on our graph. X is our slope in this case, and because it just is x by itself, we know that when x stands alone, it has a value of 1. Now when looking at slope, we decide to look at rise over run, or what I like to call the up and over of a graph. We decide to turn a whole number 1 into a fraction by simply just putting a fraction bar and putting a 1 underneath. This does not change the value of our x here, because 1 divided by 1 remains 1. Now, we've decided that our slope is 1. But where are we going to start our graph when we're looking at this linear function? Now, they've gone ahead and given us the y-intercept. In this case, it's plus 2. So we decide that we need to plot the first line at a plus 2 mark on our graph, and then use our slope of 1, or 1 over 1, to plot the rest of the lines. Now I've gone ahead and plotted the line here for us in orange. You can say clearly here that on the y-axis we have dropped a coordinate on the spot of plus 2, or 0, 2. Now this information was given to us in the linear function to begin with. It was that plus 2 part of the function. Now our slope indicates that we're supposed to go up 1 from that spot and over 1, and then again up 1, over 1, and continue that until we have at least 3 or 4 points on our graph, and then we can go ahead and connect them with a straight edge or a ruler. So we've clearly done that. We can see that we have a nice slope of 1 that's written here on our graph in orange. So from the positive 2, we traveled up to 3 and over to 1, dropped a dot, and again we traveled up 1 and over 1 more, and now we have a nice image or visual of what the function y equals x plus 2 looks like. Now, let's go ahead and work another way. Let's go ahead and figure out how to calculate the slope of a graph. So we have an image here of our graph. The line has already been drawn for us, and we need to figure out what is the slope of the graph, or the x value of a linear function or a linear equation. So we should know by now, based on what we've learned this year, that we can find the slope very easily by looking at the change in y over the change in x. Another way to look at this, the formula really is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In order to use this formula to find slope, we need to clearly indicate and pick out 2 points on our graph where this teal line crosses precisely in a corner. So I've gone ahead and plotted 2 red dots on this graph that show where this line crosses exactly in a corner, so we can use these 2 coordinates to plug into our slope formula, which again is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So the coordinates I have picked out to find the slope for this graph are 1, 0, and 5, 5. And then we're going to go ahead and put the points in our slope formula to solve for the slope. So we've listed the formula here again at the top of our slide. The change in y over the change in x. And we're using the 2 points 1, 0 and 5, 5 because we found them on our graph, and that's where the line crossed precisely in the corner. So those points are very accurate. We plug them into our formula. We have 5 minus 0 on top and 5 minus 1 on the bottom. So 5 minus 0 gives us 5, and 5 minus 1 gives us 4. Our slope of our line is 5/4. Okay? That is it is a improper fraction, and if we wanted to change that to a mixed number, we could ask ourselves, how many times does 4 go into 5? Well, it's 1 whole, and 5 minus 4 leaves us our new numerator, which would be 1, and our denominator stays a 4. So we could also say that our slope is 1 and 1/4. But leaving it as an improper fraction, 5/4, is much easier for us to go back to a graph and graph, because we could travel up 5 points and over 4, up 5 points, and over 4. That's it for this lesson. Catch you in the next one.